Let's start learning about the Passover Seder. What I'm going to do is break this into a number of lessons because there's actually quite a lot of information here. My goal is to go through each of the steps of the Seder, which you've learned over the years and you know how to sing. I want to make sure that this year we make an effort to raise our knowledge about maybe even each step by adding something new. So that's what we're going to do. Today, I'm going to take you through the beginning of Magid. We're not even going to finish Magid because Magid is so huge. But we are going to get started and see where things take us. So here's the order of the Seder as you know it. You know how to sing this. Kadesh, Orchatz, Karpas, Yachatz, Magid, Rochza, Motzi, Matzah, Maror, Korech, Shulchan, Orech, Tzafun, Barech, Hallel, Nirtzah. Now, I'm assuming that most of you know what each stage has in it. But as we go through this, if you don't know that information, the basic actions that happen, take some notes on that so that when we move further along, that information is something that you come back to and see again. Okay, let's start with the first one. Kadesh. This is our first cup of wine. So the things I want you to know about this are that the Kiddush that we say for Pesach is the Kiddush Shel Yom Tov. This is probably something you already know. But it is the Kiddush Shel Yom Tov, not the Kiddush for Shabbat. It's different. And there are parts that are added into every Kiddush Shel Yom Tov. So there's a structure for Kiddush for a holiday, and then there are insertions that go in where you say the name of the holiday for each one. So right afterwards, immediately after the Kiddush, we say the Shechianu. And then everybody sits and leans to the left to drink their wine. So the leaning you heard of before, and it specifically is talking about as we do the 4 cups of wine, we're supposed to lean to show our freedom, as a symbol of our freedom, because as slaves, this was not something we could do. From here we go to Orchatz. So look at the word Orchatz. You'll see that it's got the shorish, the same shorish as Rochetz. So this is washing. And you probably know that there are 2 places in the Seder that we wash. This first one is washing without a blessing. The reason we're washing without a blessing at this point is because when we say the bracha al netilat yadayim, that's when we're washing, knowing that right afterwards we're planning to make hamotzi. And so those are connected acts. This is not connected to hamotzi, so there is no bracha. There are a couple of explanations for why we have this early washing prior to coming to the point where we're going to say hamotzi and the matzah. One, you might find surprising, is because the structure of the Seder as a whole is very similar to how the Greeks had their special meals that were called a symposium. So at a Greek symposium, many of the same things that we do during our Seder were part of the structure of their meal. And it so happens that the rabbis were putting together the customs of what the Seder looked like at the time when that was the surrounding culture for them. They were living at a time when the Greeks were, and their culture had pervaded that part of the world. And so we see that there's been some cultural exchange. So during a symposium, there were many things that would happen. There would be, for instance, the dipping of vegetables into salt water. There was washing of hands. There was an ending part that was called something very similar to the afikoman. So we can see a lot of similarities in the structures, and it seems that this Greek culture became the structure by which our Passover Seder is um, based. So the washing of the hands perhaps comes directly from that. But the washing of the hands has another meaning, and that has to do with a sense of, from ancient culture, that there was impurities. And if you were going to eat something, even if it wasn't hamotzi, there was an importance in washing your hands. Today, we can understand that in more of a health-related um, way. But in those times, it had to do with more ritual impurity. After that, we move on to the karpas. So we've had kadesh, urchatz, karpas. And here is where we take our celery, or some people use parsley, and dip it into the salt water. Now, the bracha we say is borei pri ha'adama. So any food really that grows from the ground that's a borei pri ha'adama can be used in this place. We think of the parsley and we think of it as a green vegetable and as a symbol of spring. But a lot of different cultures around the world did not live in places where green things were growing yet. So you also will see from places like Russia that people had a tradition of using potatoes for karpas, which isn't green at all. But in that climate, at this time of the year, there were not fresh greens growing. So people could dig up their potatoes, which were also borei pri ha'adama, dip that in the salt water, and that was their karpas. I even know of some people who go out of their way to use a very unusual food, a banana. Now, you think of bananas as growing on trees because we call them banana trees, but the bracha for eating a banana is actually borei pri ha'adama because it is the structure of a banana tree is different than other kinds of trees. So I even know people who dip bananas in the salt water for karpas. We now move on to yachatz, where the middle matzah is broken in half, and the bigger piece of matzah becomes the afikoman. So I want you at your Seder, watch very carefully, because this is when one of the adults tends to put that bigger piece of matzah into the afikoman bag or wrap it into some sort of a napkin or something and put it by their side. And then they continue with the Seder thinking no one's paying attention. But at some point, they're likely going to lose their concentration, and you might see them going to hide it, or some people have the tradition of the children stealing it when the leader's not watching and holding it ransom at the end of the Seder. So we then move into by far the largest part of the Haggadah. This is the part called Magid, the telling of the story. And this has grown and grown over time. And there's more and more of the story that gets told because we're told that the more you talk about the story, the more praiseworthy that is. So people have added to it over the centuries. The very first part is a paragraph called Halach Ma'anya. And I want to show you something interesting here. If you look at the words here, you'll see that there are an awful lot of words here that end with the letter Aleph. Now, this is your clue when you're going especially through the Haggadah to know that you are not looking at the Hebrew language anymore. You are looking at Aramaic. Aramaic was a version of Hebrew that was spoken that became the colloquial language, meaning that was a language people spoke in every day. And at the time the Haggadah was being put together, Aramaic, even in Israel, was the everyday language. It's kind of similar to Yiddish in that some parts of the world people spoke Yiddish, But here, actually in Israel, at the time of the rabbis, when they were putting together the Haggadah, their spoken language was Aramaic. You can look, however, look at this word, the second word, lachma. You see that aleph on the end. If you were to take it off, though, you would see the word lechem. And you can really, really start to figure out what the words mean. So lachma is lechem, and anya is the word oni, which means poverty. So this is the bread of poverty. The dalet is often like a shin. She'achalu. That ahavatana is like avotenu, that our forefathers ate, but our the ayin is like a tsadi, but our tsa de Mitzrayim, in the land of Egypt. And then here is a very important part. Kol dichfin yeteh v'yechal. Everybody who's hungry should come and eat. Kol ditzrich yeteh v'yifsach. Everybody who is in need, come and make Pesach with us. This is the part of the Seder where we invite everyone who's hungry to come and eat with us. Now, nowadays, we don't invite people off the street to come in and eat with us. We have safety concerns and whatever. But I know I grew up, and my parents were often inviting new people to the community, and we often ourselves, my husband and I, have called the synagogue. Who is it there, that needs a place for Seder? And we would have new people or people we didn't know over all the time for a Passover Seder. So that's how we start, and then we go into the 4 questions that you know. How is this night different from all other nights? We eat chametz and matzah the rest of the year. Tonight we're only eating matzah. On the other nights, we eat all kinds of vegetables, but tonight, specifically, we're going to eat maror, bitter vegetables. On all other nights, we don't dip even once. Tonight, we're going to dip twice. And on other nights, we kind of sit relaxed or sitting up straight. But tonight, we specifically go out of our way to recline and show our freedom. Then we read the paragraph that you guys have been practicing all week. Avadim hayinu lefaro b'Mitzrayim. We were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt. V'yotzienu Hashem Elokeinu misham b'yad chazaka uvizroa netuya. And God brought us out of there with a strong hand and an outstretched arm. And it goes on to tell us that even if God had not taken us out then we and our children and our children's children, we would all be enslaved to Pharaoh and Mitzrayim. So that's a really interesting thing for us to contemplate. If God hadn't freed us, we could still be slaves, even all these years later. And even it says, if we were all wise, and we were all old, and we all knew the Torah, it's a mitzvah, a commandment to tell about coming out of Egypt. And everybody who tells more is to be praised, which is why the Haggadah has grown and grown and grown over the generations. The last thing I want to do with you today is the 4 sons or the 4 children. And it's really interesting to look at different Haggadot and see how at different times or in different places people draw the 4 children. What did the wise child look like in one situation or another? If you look through history, there are different ways. Sometimes it's a Torah scholar. But in Israel, during the time when they were building up the new state of Israel, it was a chalutz, a pioneer, who was out there farming the land. So what it means to be the wise child, the wicked child, the simple child or the child who doesn't know how to ask has changed over time. And the picture I'm sharing with you here is one I love because if you look, there are 4 different colors in each of these people here. And every single one of the 4 children here is made up of all 4 colors. The artist here, who did torn paper art, was trying to teach you specifically that every one of us has within us all 4 of these children. We all have times when we're the wise child, the child who wants to understand in depth what our Jewish life means to us. And we all at times are that Rasha, the wicked child, who says, this isn't about me. We all have moments when we're simple and we don't think deeply, and all we can think of to say is, what is this? And we all have times when we can't even ask a question. And that's kind of my favorite take on it, on the 4 children, that we all have all 4 of them in us, maybe based on our moods, maybe when we're at different ages, but we all are all 4 of the 4 children. I'm going to leave it here today. I want you to think about what we've gone over. There will be a quiz to see what you got from today, and then we'll move forward tomorrow.